This is the story of how my husband abandoned me, sick and dying, on a lonely street, but how a billionaire came to my rescue. You won't believe what happened next. Dear friends, join me as I share my story. But before I continue, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your loved ones. Your support means the world to me. Now, let me tell you my tale. My name is Grace Thompson, and I'm 32 years old. This is the story of how my life crumbled, only to rise again in ways I could never have imagined. It all started slowly, like a shadow creeping at the edges of my days. At first I brushed it off, thinking it was just fatigue. I told myself it was nothing, too many late nights juggling work deadlines, household chores, and trying to keep everything perfect for Daniel. My husband, Daniel, was always ambitious, a man who thrived on structure and success. I took pride in being the wife who never faltered beside him. But one morning, I woke up and couldn't stand. My legs trembled, as though they had forgotten their purpose. My body felt drained, hollowed out. Daniel noticed immediately. His face softened with concern as he helped me back onto the bed. "Grace, we're going to get you checked out," he said, his voice calm, that steadiness I had always relied on. "Don't worry, love." We went from one hospital to another, blood tests, scans, endless probing questions from doctors who frowned over their charts. Each result came back vague, inconclusive. They called it an autoimmune disorder, but no one could pinpoint what it really was. None of the treatments seemed to work. Each one promised relief, only to fail. Daniel spared no expense. He dipped into his savings, paying for specialists in Boston and Chicago. He even flew me to a clinic in Toronto when one doctor suggested experimental treatments. I remember watching him argue with the insurance company late into the night. His voice was tight, his fist clenched around the phone, demanding approval for procedures that barely gave me a day's relief. At first, I felt guilty. I saw the dark circles deepen under his eyes, the way he skipped meals just to stay by my side. He would hold my hand and whisper, "We're going to beat this, Grace, I promise." But my body betrayed both of us. My muscles weakened further. Walking became impossible, and I found myself confined to a wheelchair. The simplest tasks, cooking his favorite meal, arranging flowers in the living room, even brushing my hair became mountains I couldn't climb. Still, in those first months, Daniel's love seemed unshakable. He hired a nurse to assist me when he had to work late. He brought home flowers, placing them by my bedside with a smile, though I could see the strain in his eyes. He even cancelled a major business trip to stay with me during one particularly frightening episode, when I couldn't breathe without assistance. I clung to those gestures like lifelines. I told myself, this is marriage. But as time went on, Daniel's devotion started to shift. His patience began to wear thin, and the love I once felt from him felt more like a duty. I watched as the strain began to eat away at him emotionally and physically. The man who once promised to stand by me through everything seemed to be growing tired. His once reassuring words now came with an edge, his kindness replaced by exhaustion. One afternoon, as I struggled to get dressed, I saw him talking on the phone in the other room. His voice was sharp, and the words I overheard cut through me like a knife. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I need a break." And that was at the moment my heart shattered. That evening, when he came home, I was too weak to confront him, but I knew the moment had come. The man who had once vowed to never leave me was now starting to walk away. Without warning, without explanation, Daniel left. He told me I was a burden, that I had become too much to handle. He didn't even stay to pack. He just left, abandoning me in that lonely house, sick, desperate, and broken. I had no idea what I was going to do next. That's when fate, in the most unexpected of ways, intervened. While sitting alone on the porch of the house Daniel left behind, feeling more helpless than ever, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. A tall, distinguished man stepped out. He walked up to me, introduced himself as Nathaniel Blackwood, a billionaire entrepreneur who had seen my story online. I didn't know what to think. Here I was, a woman at the lowest point of her life, being offered a chance to rise again by a stranger who was everything Daniel was not. Nathaniel didn't look at me with pity. Instead, he saw potential, strength, and the woman I could become again. Over time, Nathaniel became not just my rescuer, but my partner, my friend, and, ultimately, my greatest support. And in those moments of vulnerability, I realized something profound. The greatest losses lead to the greatest gains. Daniel's abandonment wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one I never could have predicted. So, friends, this is how my life crumbled only to rise again. From the depths of despair to a new beginning with a man who saw me, not as someone broken, but as someone capable of greatness. I hope you'll join me for the next chapter of this journey, where the unexpected turns into something extraordinary. Thank you for being here, and remember, no matter how dark the road may seem, there is always light waiting ahead. This is what love looks like, staying when things are, and for a while I believed it. But beneath that fragile comfort, fear coiled inside me. What if this was my life forever? A body that wouldn't obey, a husband tethered to a woman who could no longer be his partner in the way she once had been. There were nights when I cried quietly into my pillow, careful not to wake him. My tears went just for the paining through my joints, but for the slow erasure of the woman I had been, the vibrant hostess, the laughing companion, the lover eons carried across the threshold on our wedding night. She was fading, and in her place remained a shell that Dr. Skull didn't restore. Still, Daniel stood by him, at least in the beginning. Heshed my parents over the phone, Fatho would never give up, that he loved Motu much to see me as anything but his wife. When my mother tried to suggest moving me back home so she could care for me full-time, Daniel's jaw clenched, and he said firmly, "Grace is my responsibility. She's my wife. She belongs with me." Those words pierced me with both comfort and dread. Comfort echoes. It was proof of his devotion. Dread because I feared how long he could carry that weight. Months passed and my condition only worsened. I became my skin pale against the hospital white sheets of our bedroom. Even simple movements exhausted me. My world shrank to the view of our ceiling. The sound of Daniel pacing, the soft hum of the television I could barely focus in. One evening, as he spoon-fed me broth, I whispered, "I'm sorry." High sighs flickered to mine, puzzled. Sorry for what? For being like this? For holding you back? He set the spoon down a little too quickly. He leant closer, his voice tight but tender. "Grace, don't say that. You're my wife. Love you. We'll get through this." And for a moment, I believed him again. Buten, the silence that followed, I saw the shadow behind his words, the exhaustion in his gaze. And deep inside, I wondered if love alone could survive a battle my body seemed determined to lose. That waste beginning, The sickness thattered me to a chair. The husband, Hotreed, who fought beside me. Until the weight of it all began to crush, the very love he had sworn would never fade. I didn't know it then, but warmth of those early days, ways already flickering, ready to be snuffed out by a colder, harsher reality. First, I thought it was my imagination. The small changes in Daniel's behavior, the things he no longer did. He used Hazard beside me for hours, holding my hand while I drifted in and out of restless sleep. Now he would leave the room quietly, muttering something about mails or phone calls, and sometimes hadn't come back until late into the night. When the nurse came to care for him, Daniel seemed almost relieved to hand me over. He no longer fussed about me meals or argue with doctors about Instead, he grew quieter, withdrawn, like a man retreating into. "Daniel, are you okay?" I asked Cadone evening as he scrolled absently through his phone. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, without looking at me. His tone was flat, distant. Those 3 words, he used to speak to me with warmth, with love. Now it was as though I were a burden he was trying not to acknowledge. I told myself it was stress. He wasted, financially drained. Any man would feel the same. But then came the late nights. He would leave home in the evening claiming he needed to clear his head or meet with a business associate. First, I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. But when midnight came and Hestel wasn't back, and when I saw Stephanie's smell of perfume on his shirts that wasn't mine, something inside me. The truth revealed itself, not by his words, but by my discovery. One night after he had left again, I asked the nurse to bring me my laptop. With trembling hands, I scrolled through our shared bank account, desperate to distract myself. That was when I noticed Sed's transactions, lavish dinners, hotel bookings, jewelry purchases that I had never seen. I stared at the screen until tears blurred the numbers. My heart clenched with a bitter taste of betrayal. My husband, the man who hadn't sworn never to leave my side, was already building a new life with Sumian Ales. The next morning, my voice shook as I asked, "Who is Daniel?" He froze, then sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. "Grace, don't start. Don't start," I cried, my voice. "While I sit there wasting away, you're out there living another life with another woman. How could you?" For a moment, I saw guilt flicker in his eyes, but just as quickly, it hardened into coldness. "What do you expect me to do, Grace? Sit there day after day, watching you die slowly. Do you know what it's like, Form?" His words cut deeper than any knife. Watching me die as if my illness was an inconvenience to him, a chain tying him down. I choked back sobs, my chest tightening. I thought you loved me." "I did," he muttered almost down to his breath. "But love can't fix this. I'm a man. Grace have needs. I can't keep living like this." It was in that moment that I realized the man I had once loved, the man who had once fought for me, was gone. In his place stood someone selfish, hardened, and already lost to another woman. From then on, he stopped pretending. He came home less, laughed more on his phone than he ever did in my presence, and didn't even bother hiding the fact that his business meetings were with her. I became invisible in my own home. The nurse would bathe me, feed me, comfort me when I cried. And Daniel hardly looked at me anymore. One night, as he stood at the door putting on his jacket, I asked softly, Do you still love me, Daniel? He paused, his hand frozen on the doorknob. For a moment, I thought he might turn around, rush to me, hold me, reassure me like he used to. But instead, he whispered, "Don't make this harder than it already is," and walked out. The silence that followed was louder than any words. That was when I knew Daniel wasn't just drifting away from me. He was preparing to abandon me completely. And soon he would. The first time I noticed that something had shifted. It wasn't the silence in my home, or the way my husband lingered longer outside. It was the look in his eyes when he thought I wasn't paying. Once those eyes softened outside of me, now they hardened as if I had become some sort of anchor dragging his life down. But soon enough truth surfaced. His late nights, the smell of unfamiliar perfume clinging faintly to his jacket, the hushed phone calls when he thought I was too weak to care. Every detail told a story. And then came the day he no longer bothered to hide it. Her name was Vanessa Miller, a woman whose laugh was loud enough to fill any room, whose walk carried the careless swing of someone who had never tasted real pain. She was younger than me, vibrant, dripping in the kind of confidence that came with health and energy I no longer had. She wasn't just a passing fling. She had moved in on the territory of my life, poisoning what little was left of my marriage. I remember one evening vividly. He had taken me to the doctor earlier in the day, and when the doctor said there had been no improvement, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth would crack. By the time we got home, Heberly helped me out of the car. He left him sitting in the driveway while I rushed inside. Phone pressed to his ear from my seat in the wheelchair. I heard him laugh in a way he hadn't laughed with me in months. It was light, carefree, almost boyish. I hadn't heard that sound directed at me in what felt like years. And then I heard her voice, Vanessa, sharp, playful, mocking. She said something like, "I don't know how you do it. Living with a corpse." Her words cut through the night air and sliced into me. Corpse, that's what shackled me. My heart clenched so tight it felt like it was shrinking. I had been less than human in her eyes. And me husband didn't defend me. He laughed along as though the joke were true, as though I had already died. From then on, she was always there. He didn't bother to keep her away from me. On the re-ravenings he came home, she sometimes came with him, her perfume filling my house, her heels clacking against the hardwood floors I had once cleaned with. She would look me up and down, as I sat weakly in my wheelchair, her lips twisting into a smirk. "You poor thing," she would say in a tone drenched with mockery. "I don't know how you manage like this. It must be so tiring for Ethan." I couldn't respond. My throat locked up, the words choking me from thines. What could I say? That I loved him still. That I had once been his whole world. That I never asked to best. My silence only seemed to feed her confidence. She knew what she was doing. Slowly she pushed him further from me, feeding his frustration, whispering poison into his ears. She painted me as a burden, a weight dragging down his. She dangled the idea of freedom, of joy, of a life without me, and her listen. He absorbed her venom as though it were truth. One night I overheard their argument. Vanessa's voice carried through the thin walls, dripping with impatience. "Why do you keep wasting your time, Daniel? She's never going to get better. You're re-throwing away your best years playing nurse to a dying woman. Don't you want more out of life?" Daniel's voice was low, uncertain. "It's not that simple, Vanessa." "Yes, it is," she snapped. "If you want me, If you want us, you need to cut her loose. Otherwise, you'll be stuck forever. She dragged you into her grave. There was a pause, a long silence. Anthony Daniel muttered something he couldn't catch. But the way Vanessa Slow rose after told me everything. She had won. After that night, I could feel him slipping further away. He no longer touched my hand when he passed by. He no longer asked if I had eaten. He stopped sleeping in the same bed. The warmth Ion's counted on had been replaced by a kill that wrapped around me, suffocating and merciless. I remember creeing quietly into my pillow, careful not to let the sobs grow too loud. I didn't want to give him another Riasanto, resent me. I didn't want Vanessa's mocking voice to echo in my head again, but the tears came anyway, hot and endless, soaking into the fabric beneath. I wondered how love could turn to hate so quickly, how a man who once promised to hold me in sickness and in health could look at me as though I were in nothing but dead weight. I wondered if marriage vows were only words, fragile and disposable when tested by time and success. Vanessa's presence because she wasn't content with stealing his heart. She wanted me to see it, to feel the loss burning inside me. She paraded her beauty, her health, her vitality in front of me, knowing I could owe nothing but watch. One afternoon, when Daniel had stepped outside, shelling down close to me, her eyes glittering with cruel delight. "Usho led, do him a favor," she whispered. "Let him go. Let him live. You've had your time. Don't you think it's selfish though? Keep him chained to you." Her words struck me like daggers, but I didn't. I had no strength left to no power to defend my place enthralled I had built with him. All I could do was sit in my chair and breathe. Each inhale a battle, each exhale a quiet plea for mercy. And in that silence, I realized something horrifying. Vanessa wasn't just the mistress. She was the executioner, sharpening the blade. What I didn't know was how far he would go. What I didn't see coming was the depth of his betrayal, the cruelty of his choice, and the moment when my life, as he knew it, would be abandoned on the cold pavement of a lonely street. Ithapand on a day that started like any other, grey, heavy, and hollow. I woke up in my wheelchair by the window where I often sat, staring outside, wishing further strength to walk again. Daniel barely spoke to me that morning. His eyes were hard, distant, and when he did look at me, it was as though he was staring at a ghost haunting his home. "Get dressed," he said curtly. "We are going out." For a fleeting moment, my heart leapt. The words sounded like freedom, like life, like a chance to breathe air beyond the suffocating walls of my sickness. I thought maybe he wanted to take me for a drive, or perhaps, though, see a new doctor, or just anywhere away from the suffocating presence of Vanessa. With trembling hands, I dressed myself slowly, my body shaking with every movement. He didn't help me. He just stood there, impatient, tapping his foot. His jaw clenched, like a man with somewhere important to be. When I was finally ready, he wheeled me out to the car. The drive was silent. The air between us was thick, oppressive. I tried to ask where we were going, but my voice came out small, brittle, like it might shatter if I said too much. He didn't answer. His eyes stayed glued to the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. We drove for what felt like forever, past neighborhoods I didn't recognize, past busy streets that gave way to quieter ones, until we reached a lonely, deserted street on the edge of town. Fecund of place where no one lingered, where the buildings looked abandoned, and the only sound was the occasional bark of a stray dog. My heart began to pounding my chest. Something didn't feel right. He pulled over suddenly, his movement skick and mechanical. Without a word, Hess stepped out of the car, walked around Tummy's side, and flung the door open. Mr. Mac twisted in fear as he unbuckled me belt and yanked the wheelchair out off the trunk. "Daniel," my voice cracked. "What are we doing here?" He did. His face was stone, unreadable, almost lifeless. He lifted me out of Decker and placed me in the wheelchair. My hands clung to his shirt, weakly, but heparied them off like I was an annoyance seckling where I wasn't wanted. "Please, what's going on?" I whispered, my voice. Finally, he spoke, his words cold enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "I can't do this anymore, Grace. You've ruined my life. I've given everything to you, and all I've gotten back is misery. You're a burden. I'm done." The words echoed in my head. Sharp and merciless burden. That's what Ty had become to the man who unseparated to love me forever. "Daniel, no, you can't." Tears blurred my vision streaming down my face. "You vowed to stay with me in sickness and in health." He scoffed, his mouth curling in disgust. Those were just words, and I was a fool to believe them. "Vanessa, what? You're holding me back. This is where it ends." Before I could speak again, before I could even process the cruelty of his words, he pushed my wheelchair forward, out of the car shadow, into the middle of the cracked, lonely pavement. Then he stepped back, brushing his hands off as though he had just disposed of trash. The betrayal crushed me. My chest ached, not from sickness this time, but from the weight of heartbreak so deep it felt like death. "Daniel, please," I begged, my voice raw and desperate. "Don't leave me. Please, I beg you. Don't do this." But he didn't look back. He walked to the car, slammed the door, and without a single glance in my direction, drove. The roar of the engine faded into the distance, leaving me alone with nothing but the sound of my sobs and the hello wind rustling through the deserted street. I sat there, trembling in my wheelchair, weak and frail, my hands clutching at the fabric of miscut, as though I could somehow hold myself together. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street. My body grew colder, my breath shallow. Passers-by did come once in a while. Eamon hurried past, glancing at me brief libor, shaking his head and muttering under his breath. A woman crossed to the other side of the street, her eyes avoiding mine, clutching her bag tight lighto her chest. Some just looked at me with pity, others with disgust, etho I was some unwanted burden life had abandoned. Begged them, please, help someone. But my voice was weak, barely above a whisper, and no one cared. The weight of despair pressed down on me like a mountain. My husband had abandoned me. Strangers turned their faces away. For the first time in my life, I truly believed I was alone in this world. But fate, it seemed, had one final card to play. I had almost lost the will to live. Hours passed and the night grew colder, harsher. My weak body slumped lower in the wheelchair, and every breath felt like fire inside my chest. My voice was going from begging strangers who pretended not to hear me. But then, at first I thought I was hallucinating because I had already started drifting between consciousness and nothingness. A sleek black car slowed down near me, its engine humming softly. Unlike the loud, careless car that had sped past earlier, this one The door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He was dressed in a dark coat that fit us broad, shoulders perfectly. His steps were firm but not hurried. His expression, serious yet kind. He wasn't just anyone. You could see it in the way he carried himself. This man had power, wealth, presence. Good Lord, he muttered under his breath as his eyes met mine. I expected disgust, maybe fear. Instead, I saw something different. Compassion. He crouched down beside me so we were face to face. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice deep and calm. Like Samoan, who was used to giving orders, but gentle enough to show care. My lips, "Help, please." It was all I could manage. He didn't waste a second. Turning to his driver, he said, "We can't leave her here. Help me get her into the car now." The driver hesitated. "Sir, she looks very ill. Maybe we should call no one." The man cut in firmly, his eyes still locked on me. "She doesn't need strangers staring at her like she's some burden. She needs help, my help." The driver obeyed. Carefully, he lifted me from the wheelchair. His strong arms, surprisingly gentle as they placed me in the back seat of the warm car. I almost wept from the simpler kindness of being treated like a human being again. The man sat beside me, adjusting his coat around my shoulders to keep me warm. "You'll be all right," he assured me. "I promise you're safe now." The car began to move, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt like my life wasn't ending. It was beginning again. "Who are you?" I whispered, fighting to keep my heavy eyelids open. "My name is Alexander Reed," he said softly, "and you don't need to worry about anything anymore. I'll take care of you." The name sounded vaguely familiar, though my mind was too clouded to process it. Later, I would learn he was one of the most respected billionaires in the country. A man known not only for his wealth, but for his generosity and fairness. But in that moment, he was simply the stranger who had chosen to stop when no one else would. I tried to thank him, but my words dissolved into tears. He reached out for my hand, held it firmly, and whispered, "Save your strength. You're going to need it. From now on, you won't face this world alone." As the city lights blurred past outside, I leaned against the soft leather seat, my frail body finally giving in to exhaustion, for the first time in forever. I allowed myself to hope just a little that maybe my story wasn't finished after all. And sitting there beside me, Alexander Reed made me believe in miracles again. Do viewers please kindly stay tuned for part 2, where everything changes, and the shocking twist of my story will finally be revealed.